Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hello everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It is fantastic to have your company for another episode of the show. We've got a jam-packed episode. We're talking about achievement and specifically how to achieve more. Why is it that some people achieve more than others, and how can we unlock potential in each of us? My guest today, Tyler Williams, is going to go through that in detail. But before we get to Tyler, I have some really exciting news I'm just dying to tell you. And I guess I should preface this news by saying when we started the podcast back in 2016, it was based on this notion that the best ideas for dentistry come from outside of dentistry. I've long held the view that traditional practice management techniques are probably a bit outdated for today's modern world. As business owners, as practice owners, the world has changed, the market is more sophisticated, competition is certainly tighter and tougher than it's ever been, and as practice owners or business owners, we need to level up our skills, our knowledge, so that we can achieve success in that element of our life. And so with the podcast, we've always been talking to people and unpacking their lessons and bringing them back to dentistry. And our next piece of the puzzle, our next venture continues in that vein. And so I'm really delighted to let you know that we have finally released the Savvy Dentist magazine. Now, I need to tell you that the idea of a sister publication, a magazine, has been floating around my brain since the day we launched the podcast. I've always felt that there was a need for a print publication, and I'm delighted to bring it to you. So in the magazine, you'll have articles from people outside of dentistry who are doing extraordinary things in business and in life, but equally we're going to be hearing from experts who are going to give you information to help you run your business more efficiently, more profitably, to help you scale and grow and do all the things you want to do. So whether it's legal issues, we're going to be hearing about those. Whether it's about accounting, wealth creation, we're going to hear about that. Whether it's about recruitment and HR and building teams, you'll hear about that. Whether it's managing your information technology and protecting data, you'll hear about that. Whether it's fitting out your practice to achieve the look and feel you want, marketing, all of those sorts of things are going to be in the magazine, and we are delighted to bring it to you. The magazine is going to come to you 4 times a year in the season, so summer, autumn, winter and spring, you'll have a magazine. And so we are launching the magazine right now. The winter edition is the first edition, and we can't wait to give it to you. It's available in print and in digital format, print from edition 2, I should say, and that magazine is totally free. So all you need to do is head across to our website, sign up to get a copy of it so we know where to send it to you, whether it's digitally or physically, and we'll make sure you get the magazine in your hot little hands, and you can refer to that information, use that information, apply that information, and grow the practice you've always wanted and achieve success on your terms. So we're super excited to share that with you, and I hope you find it helpful. I hope you find it useful, and I want to say thank you to you for your support with the podcast, and it's given us the encouragement to make sure we bring this next publication to life for you. Now, getting back to our guest, Tyler Williams, he's an extraordinary guy. This is a really interesting, thought-provoking conversation. This is going to talk to you about how to unlock your potential by overcoming fear, overcoming other issues that hold people back. And I believe, as Tyler believes, that what allows some people to achieve more than others is not because they're smarter, not because they have access to more knowledge, although knowledge is important. It's because they've learned how to get the best out of themselves. They've learned how to overcome the fear that everyone faces. They've learned how to take action on the things that they learn. And in this conversation, we're going to be exploring those concepts in a whole lot more detail so that you can unlock your potential and achieve your goals. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Tyler as much as I enjoyed recording it. Let's get into it. Tyler Williams, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Nashville. Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast.
Jesse, it's my pleasure, and it's an honor to share some time with you.
Oh, well, I've been really looking forward to this conversation. You've got a really interesting background. Your dad's a dentist. You've worked around dentists for a long time, but you've also had a rich and diverse career outside of that. You sing, you drive race cars. Like, you got a whole other life going on there, which is fantastic, and I can't wait to dive into it. So I'm probably just going to start with music. You're in Nashville, it's Music City. How did you get started in music? What was that journey?
It's been a long journey, and I got here about 5 years ago. I'm 39 years old now, so I didn't start pursuing Nashville until my mid-30s. But as a kid, was a performer, loved to sing, loved to be loud and kind of obnoxious, right? The loud kid that wouldn't stop talking or making sounds. Had a performance at the Fox Theater as an 11 and 12-year-old kid, which is a 4,000-seat venue in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And at Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And the first year was fun. The second year, you kind of go, wait a minute, these people do this this is a career choice. Like they're choosing to do this and getting paid. I didn't know that I would do Broadway necessarily. I just thought I wanted to perform on stage because standing in front of 4,000 people was pretty cool. Yeah. And 2 years later, had a failed performance in a house party, forgot the lyrics to the first song. We didn't practice, just showed up and was winging it. When you take the vocals out of a song, if you're in your car and you're singing your life away, you think you know every single word, right? Mm. Well, when you are playing it without that prompting, I didn't remember what I was supposed to be doing when I was supposed to be singing. And so the only thing I knew to do in that moment in front of my friends, girls I was crushing on, guys I was trying to impress, and I walked off stage, stood in the doorway, watched my friends play, and said, I'll never do that again. And so that was my first real fear moment, that I had a massive encounter with fear. So I said, I'll never do that again. Didn't want to feel that embarrassment, the shame, the guilt, just looking stupid in front of my friends. And 10 years later, I had not performed in public since that moment. So I let a decade pass before I got back into music, and I took a breakup with a girl that I thought I was going to marry at one point. And I found myself at a Two for Tuesday getting some wings with a buddy of mine at a local restaurant. And it was a karaoke night, and it wasn't planned. And he said, I know you can sing. You should get up there and try it and see what you can do. And that started what's been now almost a 15-year journey with karaoke to open mic nights. That led to performing at fraternity and sorority type parties at universities. Then I wrote a book called I Have a Voice, which really chronicled this journey of rediscovering my voice, not just as a singer, but as a human, and how you show up in the world. But I thought, why not put some music to that book? So I wrote my first songs that were country songs, released that. And I said, man, I can do better. And here we are, we're 3 EPs in, had some songs played on country radio at the Crook and Chase show, Countdown, sang national anthems from Tulsa, Oklahoma in front of 10,000 people to the WNBA Atlanta Dream in Atlanta, and TV and radio appearances. So we've had a lot of fun with music, and it started about 4 or 5 years old.
Wow, that's quite a journey. And I know fear is something that you talk a lot about in your work, and I know we're going to talk a lot about the inner game of business today, because I think that's a really important game. But that experience that you had, when you're on stage, you forget the lyrics, and you're standing there, and it must have been like one of those moments, metaphorically, but feeling quite naked in front of an audience. I've not had that particular experience. I've had other experiences where I've had moments of, oh my God, what's going to happen? And it can really be very crushing. So I'm really interested to explore how fear shows up in people's lives, and I'm really interested to explore how that stops people fulfilling their potential and doing the things that they can, because clearly you've always been able to sing, right? And, your voice was always there, but for 10 years, no one got to hear that lovely voice of yours, and you were probably, I don't know what you were thinking in those 10 years, but maybe that's the question I should be asking. During that 10-year period, what were you thinking? Was it just a fear, I can't sing this out loud again because I don't want to experience that? What were you thinking? What were you feeling in that 10-year period?
During those 10 years, I had some friends who knew I could sing. I'd sing in the car. There's a couple places where it's semi-safe. So there's some friends who knew I could sing. Yeah. Family knew I could sing. But for the most part, it was a hidden talent. Mm. And people just did not get to experience. Like you said, I was hoarding it for myself. It's in the shower and in the car, and that was it. Mm. When I had to give speeches in high school or college and stand in front of a room, it was pure panic. My heart would race, that literal physiological trigger where you're flooded, your skin gets a little bit tingly, your knees are shaking, the whole body. It's a full body response for me. Mm. And I really can track it back to that singular moment where I forgot the lyrics. And it's almost like I'm not going to go so far to say it's PTSD, but it really was a traumatic experience that was stored in the body. And for a decade, I didn't know how to step into it and really let my fear be something I could feel and embrace it and move through it. I was trying to erase it and disassociate and disconnect and numb myself away from it. And for that 10 year, it really kept me from showing up, not just in those moments where I wanted to sing or could have sang, but in those moments where even just connecting with friends or family at a deeper level.
How many people in your experience, and I know you do a lot of work coaching, and I know you're very familiar with dentists because your dad's a dentist, you've worked with dentists in your consulting coaching world as well. How many people would you see, or what proportion of people would you see that have a gift that is hidden as a result of fear?
I believe when you do the inner work and really do some discovery, that everyone has some level of a gift that's untapped.
Yeah.
They may know what it is, but the potential of it's not fully expressed into the world. Now, I would argue a majority of them actually have a talent that is not expressed at all, because somewhere in their life, they made a decision or somebody spoke something over them that lodged within their mind or their body that said, hey, that thing you do is not actually a gift. We don't like it.
Wow.
You're too analytical, you're too smart, or you're too slow, or you can't think fast enough. When in reality, they just need a time to process. And it diminishes the gift and the opportunity to display the expression of that individual. And that's really where my work comes into play. Is we can look at the outside factors of the world, the external experiences. Working with dentists so much for the last 10 years, you see they want the opportunity to have somebody help them with their branding, their marketing, or their storytelling, and hand it off and let somebody else run with it, right? Because when they're chairside, that's where their bread and butter is. It's the chairside dentist. That's when we make money, right?
Yeah, they're comfortable.
But it's the internal work and exercising their ability to connect, whether they're the gift of gab and great connectors, or whether they have a little bit of anxiety and their connection feels a little awkward to them. It's the ability to really feel into the fear, not disassociate, disconnect from it, that allows them to be expressed in a way that maybe it's a creative side that's not expressed as a dentist because somebody told them they can't be creative. It's too weird. It's too fluffy. And so they went really analytical, but it's not really their bread and butter, right?
What I'm really interested in exploring is why some people achieve more than others. And my hypothesis on this, Tyler, is that it's not a lack of knowledge, because sometimes, there's all the knowledge in the world. All you need to do is go to the internet, listen to, the work that you do, listen to the work that I do, or anyone else for that matter, right? But still, there's something that stops people achieving, and fear is obviously one of those reasons, which we'll come back to in a second. And I can't help but think of, whether it's obesity, for example. We know, just to step away from dentistry, we know that people know they should eat right, have a healthy lifestyle, all those sorts of things. But here in Australia, at least, we have obesity in epidemic kind of proportions, and I believe it's an issue in many Western countries. And so knowledge itself is not going to be the answer. It's how we apply that knowledge, but what gets in the way of the application of that knowledge, what gets in the way of achievement. So I'd really like to kind of frame our conversation in that particular light. And so coming back to fear, Tyler, because I think we've all experienced fear at some point. I remember as a young kid, I was meant to go into a swimming race. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And one of my friends was a very good swimmer, and I just didn't get on the blocks. I just didn't start. And to that day, I can still feel the anxiety from that experience. So I want to talk about what you said about feeling the fear and moving through it, because you're right. Like, your experience was to recoil from fear. I think most of us recoil from fear, but I really want to understand your thoughts about leaning into fear and moving through that so we can come out the other side. So I'm wondering if you could just help us explore that for a second, please.
Everyone experiences fear. Now, growing up, there were brands around called No Fear. So the clothing brand. So you go out and you see this expression of not having fear. You grow up when just the message of being fearless and overcoming all the odds and obstacles. And it starts this mindset that we should not pay attention to fear, or that it shouldn't be something that can control us. And yet everyone that I've ever met at some point experiences fear, because it's a physiological response within the body. It's not just a mindset. It's actually an experience that the body is creating based on factors. It could be just simply intuitive hit. When you look at, you're walking in a parking garage at night and you get this intuitive hit that something doesn't feel right. That's the body's fear response beginning to speak to you. And yet most often people ignore it because it's woo-woo, or it's out there. You don't have something to back it up with information and data that makes sense to the mind. And so there's this conversation of disconnecting from what's happening And the power of embracing your fear and making friends with fear is it allows you to have an honest conversation that one, fear exists. It's okay to feel fear. And the more you can embrace it and connect to it, the greater your opportunity is to move through it and own the fear, connect to the fear rather than letting it own you and control you. And so it starts with understanding what are my own fears, And with my work with my brand Fear Formula, people ask, well, what is the fear formula? I look at it as there is not a single fear formula. It's what is your unique fear formula? Because my fears are different than your fears. And the fears of one client that I work with is going to be different from another. The audiences that I'm speaking to, everyone has a variation of fear that is unique to them. And so when we're doing the work, we're uncovering what the formula is for that specific person so that we can really understand how to navigate that conversation together. Because one person may be working from a nervous system experience that they need to connect to their body more. Another person may be stuck in their mind and they need to slow down the mind and dive deeper into some breath work, some meditation. Maybe someone else needs to go release some energy, so they need to go do something active. Maybe someone needs some talking and exposure to connect to the fear. And what often happens is we want an easy solution. We want a quick fix. And so we go looking for more information, to your point. How do we have so much information and so little action? And that conversation around fear and lack of an action is, well, what happens when you take action? You can fail. You can be judged. You can feel inadequate, uncertain. And so there's more than a dozen ways that we can see that information actually be the thing that keeps us from taking action, because we think we're doing something right and good, yet we're not allowing time and space to digest. And so imagine if you ate a meal and it never digested and you go eat again, you're just going to get full and expand and you're going to be bloated. And eventually, it's not going to be a good feeling, right?
Right.
Well, it's very much like the information we're taking in. It's just information overload. We're reading book after book, podcast after podcast. We're going to seminar after seminar, mastermind after mastermind. And the question is, are we truly allowing space to experience the life around us, to digest the information fully, to receive it, and then transmute it out into the world in a way that's working for us? And for so many people, the answer is no, we're not doing that because we're afraid to slow down. We're afraid to really get vulnerable with ourselves and say, what's really holding me back here? And that's where that conversation around fear kicks in, because when we can activate your expression, connect to your fear, we start knocking through and really breaking down these barriers of what's holding you back from creating the practice of your dreams, the culture that's thriving, a patient base that loves to come and connect with you, and creating your opportunity to speak to the community in a way that's really powerful, because local market leaders are the backbone of a great culture.
It's a really interesting point that you make there about everyone having their own fear formula and finding their own way through it. And I'm curious to ask how you discover that. How do you work out what yours is? Do we kind of suddenly or intuitively know what that fear formula is, maybe through learned experience? Do we have to rediscover it? Again, just based on the work you've done with others, how do people discover what their own fear formula is?
Being willing to do the inner work.
Yeah.
And not solely seeking the external factors, not looking for that outside help to fix something, but having the willingness to slow down, to pause, to reflect, to ask the deeper questions of what's going on inside of me. We don't just have a mental health problem in the world, we have a body health. It's the connection between mind and body, understanding what are we actually feeling? That nervousness, it's holding space within my gut. When I go to do this thing, well, that's your body speaking to you. Yeah, we're stuck in the mind because we want to make sense of something. And a feeling in my gut doesn't really make sense to me other than it just feels uneasy, right? And so it's the conversation, how do we create self-awareness to understand when we're doing the things that we're doing, what are we actually experiencing? What is the emotion? What is the thought? What are the actions? And how do those merge together in an experience that either is working or is not working for me? And so the journey around fear really is, it starts with a massive exploration around self-awareness. And then how do we transmute and express ourselves through the fear to make our mark on the world?
Put yourself in a few situations that for me would elicit that fear reaction. So for me, singing on stage would absolutely terrify me. And that's probably my deepest, darkest fear, if I'm confessing that out loud in a public arena like this. And I had an experience as a kid where I was kicked out of a music class because I was too embarrassed to sing, and my teacher just lost their temper and moved me out. But And so that's been a really interesting experience. But I'm also like, I've got a fear around excessive speeds, and you race cars as well, right? So you're doing the two things in my world that cause me the most amount of fear, and you're progressing through that with a sense of ease, right? And so I'm curious to ask about the race cars and how that translates, because there's emotional risks which you took with your singing, and you had that issue there, but you weren't in physical danger, right? But then when you're in the car, there's the physical danger part, there's the risk of rolling it, crashing it, whatever. I'm wondering if fear shows up differently or not, based on emotional risk versus physical risk, emotional safety, physical safety. Have you noticed anything in that space at all, or is it one and the same fear?
The interesting parallel between music and racing is the experience of fear for me was correlated to stepping into the experience. So in the moments before the activity was to begin is when my anxiousness would begin to kick up. And on the singing side, it was the flooding experience where the body's literally overcome. On the racing front, it was the moments before we were strapped in, you got the belts tightened, and there's about a 2 to 3 minute window before they fire the engines and we take off and start running. And once you're underway, that goes away, because now you step into this flow state because everything's happening so fast. You have this flow state moment where all things kind of go out the window because you're flying by the seat of your pants in a sense. And the same with music. Once I was in the moment, about a minute into the song, of the first song, I would step into flow state and the rest of the performance would feel really great. And what I learned is that I needed to figure out how was I able to manage my fear and embrace it within that 5-minute window before the performance and before the race began, that would allow me to not feel overwhelmed, anxious, worried about thoughts or creating thoughts and letting thoughts spin around in my mind that weren't actually productive for what was about to occur. Because once you're in the car, sure, you could take your mind off of what you were doing. But when you get in a flow state, it's much easier to maintain that focus. And on the racing front, the danger factor is high enough that you typically are able to stay focused and aware of what you're doing. And despite almost flipping out of a racetrack or going head first into a wall, you come back the next week and for some reason we decide to do it again. Why race car drivers do that, I can't tell you, other than we just love to race.
Yeah, no, that's totally cool. I can tell you that is not my dream, that one right there. But I admire people whose dream it is. So what I'm picking up from this conversation, and I think this is I'm trying to draw a couple of distinctions and parallels here, and that is, it sounds like in your situation, and again, I'm curious to understand if this is common, that the fear kicks in before the performance or before the race. And so it's the anticipation of what could go wrong, or the anticipation of what may lead to some calamity, that creates that fear in the first place. But once you're into it, then you're into it. You're in that flow state. So as you say, is that getting through that window before that performance or before that race. Do you feel that is a fairly common experience, that the fear occurs before the event rather than within the event?
This is a great question, because as we talked about, that's part of my fear formula.
Yes.
And so when we think about the individual experience, the listener's experience, they're going, well, I don't really have that anxiety before I start to do things. Mine kicks in the middle.
Right.
So as a dentist, they're in the middle of a procedure and all of a sudden they go, wait a minute, I've got a hygiene check I've got to do. Or I've got another patient sitting next door and I know they're waiting on me and I'm going slow. Something's not going right in this procedure. And that anxiety starts to kick in mid-procedure, right?
Yep.
And so then it becomes, how do you navigate in the middle of something? Because it didn't happen in the beginning.
Got it.
And so that kicks in where now it's what's their fear formula for slowing the mind down, calming the body while they're still doing something that may have moments of flow state. They're in and out of that, but the anxiety is triggering in the moment. So how do we get them back into that moment to refocus and not be overcome and be derailed potentially for that rest of the day?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I guess, it could happen at any point in the procedure as well. Maybe if you've done that procedure before and it didn't go well at that particular point last time, you're approaching that point again with a different patient, same procedure, same potential for that to kick in. So I wanted to just zoom back out for a second, because we spoke about what allows some people to achieve tremendous outcomes versus those that don't live up to their potential or achieve mediocre outcomes. And we've spoken about fear being one thing that holds people back. You spoke about the individual having their own fear formula. You spoke about how to lean into it and to slow down and be self-aware and all those things around it. I wanted to explore other things that derail potential, other things that cause people not to fulfill or to achieve the outcomes they're trying to. And I want to talk a little bit about implementation and speed of implementation, using the speed metaphor from racing. Again, I know you use that in your work as well. What is it about implementation that, well, let me ask that question in a better way. Why do some people implement better than others?
We can look at it several different ways. It's easy to say, well, some people just naturally are more driven and ambitious than others.
Yeah.
And we can say it's as simple as that. There's truth in that.
Yes.
And there's also truth, and that we can learn to implement, we can learn to take action. And it really comes down to understanding the predictors of their own behavior. Why do they do the things they do or not do the things they do? And getting to ask the deeper question of what's happening in that moment. And so let's say you go to a mastermind and you pick up this great idea and you want to take it home and implement it. And yet here you are 6 weeks later and you've not done any of the things you wanted to do. Well, it's asking what's happening for me in those moments that I have this thing that could be really valuable and yet I'm not doing it. And typically it comes down to fear of the unknown. And again, I don't want to wrap this back into simply saying it's about fears, but what is the fear of the unknown, the uncertainty, the question of, am I strong enough? Am I capable enough as a leader to bring this to life? Does my office manager run the show and I'm too timid to take ownership of this part of the practice? I want to shift or change and lead this conversation because I know the office manager maybe doesn't buy in the same way I do, and I can't get their leadership on board with mine. And so it really comes down to how do we communicate and how do we lead? Well, if you're a solo doc and you're running the show, you have to be able to bring your ideas to life by asking the deeper questions about what's going on within me, that maybe there's a message from childhood that somebody said and spoke something over me. Maybe I picked up something in dental school where a professor spoke something over me about my technique or my style. Maybe I just have this idea that I'm awkward or not confident, and everybody around me is very bold and brash, and they have this fiery, passionate personality. And I've never been able to bring that to life. And so what are the stories we're telling ourselves about who we are and how we show up in the world? And again, we want to look to these external factors. Well, if I just listen to this podcast, it's going to tell me what to do. Or if I bring in this consultant, they're going to tell me what to do. But it's about finding out what's going on within me, bringing my ideas to life, bringing my beliefs to life, sometimes resurfacing some thoughts and beliefs that we're not even familiar with because they're so deep in our subconscious. And then we hold space for them. We meet them with loving kindness. We don't shame ourselves for the things we have not done or don't do. And we challenge our natural response to see if we can stir something up that moves us a little closer, because one little baby step could be the shift that really unlocks the potential of that human.
Progress, not perfection, right?
Right.
Okay, so if we think about action taking and implementation and understanding that, as you said, some people are inherently more motivated. And yes, you're right, there is some truth in that, but there's also, I think, some wisdom in examining what I'm thinking, feeling at the moments when I can be taking steps and I'm choosing not to in that instance. I'm really interested in your thoughts around distraction, trying to do too much. You've worked with lots of clients in dentistry, outside dentistry. You've had your own experiences in life as well, and you live a full life. Do you see that one of the barriers to implementation is trying to be everything to everyone, to be, the fantastic dentist, the fantastic parent, the fantastic husband or wife or spouse or partner, to be physically fit and have a rippling six-pack, to do all of those things and to try and seek perfection in so many places all at once? I'm just curious in your thoughts around that.
I don't look at life as trying to find balance.
No.
I've always thought balance is this idea that sounds nice, but I look at balance as a scale. If you always are going to tip the scale one way or the other. It rarely finds that equilibrium long enough before it tips down, right?
I agree.
Or a gymnast on a balance beam, they can perform an excellent routine, but rarely is it perfect.
Yes.
And oftentimes they're falling or failing. And so I've always looked at finding what's the rhythm in life that I'm looking to create. And you can think of a conductor of a symphony or an orchestra. And you can think of how during the movement of a particular track they're bringing to life, it has a different flow, different movements. And that's just much like our lives. So you might have a season where you're really dedicated and honed in on expanding the practice and growth and bringing this ambitious belief that you can grow the practice wildly within 1 year and set the tone for the next 5 years. You might have a season where you are realizing, your body is important and you want to have longevity as a chairside dentist. Your back is important. You want to have a strong core. You want to have some strong glutes. You want to have some muscle to support this frame because you want to do this thing for the next 25 years, right? And you want to feel good doing it. You don't want to hurt. So maybe you take your fitness a little more serious. Maybe you realize that work isn't everything. Yeah. And when you're dying, you're going to look back and go, man, what if I took that hour less once a week and spent time with my kids? Or what if I took the afternoon off on a Friday and devoted it to my family? And giving yourself the grace to find the rhythm that works for your life and the season of life that you're in. And so being able to find the potential within how we express ourselves, how we connect. And again, it comes back to like, what are our values? What are we believing in? What, do I have to work 5 days a week, every day, 10 hours a day to be successful? You don't have to. You could, but you don't have to. And so what's the rhythm you're trying to find within the conversation that is important to you, your family, and those around you?
I really, really appreciate that because there's a couple of key thoughts there that I think are really important to dive in on. One is seasons of life. I'm a little bit older than you, Tyler. I'm going to say a little bit. I'm actually meaning a lot. Mind you, ladies and gents, this is an audio program. I should tell you that Tyler said at the beginning he's 39. He looks about 29. So he's obviously got a good rhythm and balance going on with his health and well-being. But I want to talk to you a little bit about seasons of life because this is an interesting conversation that I've had with lots of people. And in my life, Tyler, I've been extremely fortunate to have been mentored by quite a few older men who have kind of taken me under their wing and guided me through various points of my life. And I've still got a couple of friends who are 20, 25 years older than me. And it's great because there's a perspective that they have that I'm yet to experience. And what I've noticed about getting older is priorities shift and change. Things I took for granted in my 20s and 30s, particularly my physical health, I no longer take for granted. Relationships I took for granted, I no longer take for granted, and things that were important to me in my 20s and 30s are perhaps less so now, and so on and so forth. So I wondered if you have observed that in your life as well about the changing priorities, the changing seasons, because I think this is a really interesting conversation. It's probably not the conversation I had intended to have, but it's a thread you've given me to explore. And being the curious person that I am, I'm really keen to understand what your perspective is on that and how things ebb and flow in life and your views on that.
I've always been a naturally driven and ambitious person.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean I'm always flying 100 miles an hour through life. I have seasons where there's a quickening and the pace is faster. And going back to your conversation around speed, it's not just simply foot on the pedal all the way down to the floor where we're just going. There's seasons. We're stopping, we're going, we're refueling, we're changing tires, we're taking care of ourselves, right? So it's finding that rhythm, what's working. But in my 20s, it was all about the outcome. I was an end result guy. Yeah. When I started racing, my ambition was to be a NASCAR Cup Series driver. I didn't achieve that result, but that's what I was desiring and hoping for. And nothing else mattered if I didn't get there. Yes. As I stepped out of that world and the pursuit of that full time, there was a season where you look back and go, I loved what I did during those years, but I missed opportunity to fully be present in the moment and really, really, really let it sink in of this amazing opportunity I was having to drive race cars, to do that with my friends and my team, to share in all the stories and all the times where we're having a rain delay and we just get to be with each other and be present and have fun, great conversations, cutting up with other teams next to us, all the way to standing in victory lane. I remember my dad was filming me after we had gone through our tech shed, getting everything approved to make sure we weren't cheating. Yes. And he puts a camera in my face, says, "How do you feel?" And I gave him like a minute response of, "Man, I'm so excited." And then I quickly shifted to, "But we got to come back next week and do it again." I was already thinking about what was next. Yeah. And so I think to your conversation around changing seasons, my 20s were filled with looking at the final destination. How can I get there as fast as possible? Yes. Because then that's success. And I was just talking with someone earlier today, and my values really, when I look at them today, it's I want to honor myself and those around me. I want to experience more freedom in life. I don't want to be constrained by the ideals of other people. I want to live my own freedom to be expressed in the world. Expression is another one of my values. I want to be fully expressed in the world. I don't want to suppress how I show up and speak, because for so long, through that 10 years of not performing in public, I felt like I was, kind of constrained and not being able to be fully myself, because I was afraid what people would think. Man, what if I say something stupid? Or what if I fail again, even just as a speaker, not as a singer? I want to bring more gratitude to the world, and I want to have more fun in the world. Those are some of my core values right there. They're a lot different than the end result of trying to achieve this ambitious level of success, right?
Totally. It's a very different energy, isn't it? Because, in your 20s, I want to be a NASCAR driver. I want to do this. And it's all out there. Whereas what I'm hearing in this conversation is it's now more an internal shift of who am I and how can I express myself fully in the best way possible.
And you can't see my face because we're on video right now, but for the listeners, like, my energy shifted as I'm talking about honor and freedom. Like, I'm feeling that as I'm speaking it, because it makes life so much more richer in the present moment. And I can apply this to every area of my life. I can apply it to my client work. I can apply it to having fun on a podcast like this. I can apply it to personal relationships, romantic relationships. And if I bring those values into every one of those aspects of my life, it creates a life of meaning for me. And those don't have to be your values, right? But if all those were simply, I'm deliberate, I'm driven, I'm intense, that's not bad. Those still could be values, but those are typically the ambitious level of, I'm trying to find the final outcome, and I'm going to do all things at all costs to make it happen. And when you typically live in that world, which so many of us who are high performers tend to do, you miss out on some of the juiciness of life, the beauty of life. And when we slow down to get some of that into the world, put that into the soup, we get to create something that can be fun. And sometimes, and that's where, especially in dentistry and the clients we've worked with, you shake things up a little bit, because they're used to being held back, because they're trying to, it's a position of influence, right?
Yes.
You have this community who looks up to you. They automatically expect you to have success in the world because you have this practice, and they know, oh, you're a dentist, you have to be successful. Yet maybe they don't know that there's some financial struggles, or maybe you struggle with your leadership and your culture right now, but you can't tell the patient that. And so there's all these internal battles that are being dealt with. So it's when we infuse these values that aren't purely numbers driven or financial driven or some other factor we've cycled in, we can go, okay, what if it was fun today?
Yeah.
What if this was filled with a lightness, and it shifts the nature of the conversation?
It's very thought-provoking, actually, Tyler. It's very thought-provoking to shift from an external locus of control to more of an internal locus of control. And I think that that's a really important mindset shift. It probably took me late 40s before I started really considering that in a different way. And so, the fact that you've picked this up obviously way earlier than that, and I hope our listeners do as well, because I think that's where as you say, the juiciness of life is in that, in understanding who you are and trying to live fully. And it's cliche though this sounds, is the happiness is found in the journey, not so much the destination. Well,
and the powerful part of this is just because you maybe shift your values to some words that bring in a little more life, a little more essence, you'll often find that the things you're trying to create, the ambitious side, they still come to life, and they actually come to life faster, because now you've taken the desire of this, I have to make it happen at all costs. You've detached from an outcome, and now you're just living in the present moment, so present, so connected, that your patients go, like, this guy, this girl, like, something's different about the way they're showing up today. And your team feels it. And you begin to create this relationship where now your entire leadership philosophy has changed, and it literally shifts the atmosphere around you. It's really powerful.
It's funny you mentioned that as well, because I realized in my own life, when I started letting go of outcomes, I actually achieved those outcomes way faster, way easier, way less, I don't know, what's the word I'm trying to find? It didn't feel like I had to grind so hard. You know what I mean? It became perhaps back to your state of flow, which I think is really key. Just to zoom back out again, Tyler, I know I took us down a bit of a tangent, but I think it was a good conversation.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. Because I think this is really where the conversation lives and where the beauty of the inner game lives. I want to talk a little bit, just briefly, back to what stops people achieving. We've spoken about fear. We've spoken about taking action and implementation. We've obviously had a conversation about seasons in life and priorities and shifting and taking the focus off the outcome solely to being a little more internal. What else have you observed that is an impediment to people experiencing the success they're seeking?
People don't believe that what they actually want is possible.
Tell me more about that.
Someone comes in and they're successful. You know, they already have a 6-figure personal income. They're doing 7 figures in their practice. Nothing's majorly wrong with their life. Maybe their income is matching what they're actually bringing home. So money's a little tight. But life isn't awful for that person. But they want more and they know they're capable of more. And yet they have a story around money that they shouldn't make a certain amount, or that it's not okay to be wildly successful because other people will see them in a different light. And so they adopt a belief or an idea or a story or a message that limits the expression of their gifts and their talents. Because you go to dental school, you put some hard-earned hours to accomplish a major feat, to bring something of value to the world.
Yes.
To be a pillar of the community. And yet there's these beliefs or these systems that other people have placed upon them that you adopted maybe as early as childhood, maybe in high school, maybe in college, maybe at dental school. And maybe something even kicked in your 30s and something shifted for you. But you've been holding this story in for your whole life. And finally someone comes along and say, could it be possible that you could do $10,000 a day in production? And they go, I'm only doing 5, or even I'm only doing 3. How could I possibly do 10? And then you start provoking them a little bit and say, but what if? Who would you need to become to be the $10,000 a day producer? And maybe it starts as an entire practice goal, right? Maybe it's not you as the practitioner. Maybe it's the entire practice. Include some hygiene. Maybe you also have another doc in there. Maybe it's 2 docs and 2 hygienists or 4 hygienists to create that number to begin with.
Yeah.
But eventually you go, well, maybe that's possible. And what if I allowed myself the freedom to believe that I could do that? And even that conversation, it sounds simple, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just to give yourself the permission and the freedom to do it. But that's where so many of us live in a constrained world. We place limiters on the possibilities because it sounds a little too ambitious, ridiculous. Or what if I actually have the success I want? Well, then what do I do with it? Can I manage the success? Can I manage the power? Well, what if I do add in and bring in that associate who can help us get to 2 million? Who do I become then? Can I actually lead the practice? Can I lead that doctor alongside with me? Or am I a control freak and I need to have certainty every moment and I can't release and relinquish some shared exposure within the practice? It's the beliefs that we're adopting.
Yeah.
And every day we wake up, we have a chance to explore the beliefs. And it's not just about affirmations. It's really doing, again, the deep inner work to understand, like, why do I believe what I believe? Is it okay for me to be truly successful? Can I be okay if I achieve this level of success? Can my spouse support me in the way that I need to be supported? Can I still show up for my children if it requires me to work 1 extra hour a day? Or am I willing to pick up, I call them income centers. If I don't place implants, can I go pick up that as an income center within the practice to drive more revenue? Am I willing to place an implant? Despite maybe I have fear of doing that.
Yeah.
Or any other income center that may be fearful for you because you haven't picked the skill up yet. And you go, wait a minute, I went to dental school. I had to pick up a handpiece for the first time and slide a burr in there. And that was terrifying one day. So you go, oh, maybe I could do that thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't be so bad or scary. Or maybe you say, you know what? I'm okay not doing that income center and bringing that into the practice, but I can hire my associate who is capable.
Yes.
And we can still create opportunity. So it really centers around these conversations. I can put almost all of them back in the conversation with fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking.
I can put almost all of them into a conversation around what is the belief associated with the story and the message. And then we get into the work of some of it's mindset work and some of it's body work. For clients who don't mind doing some breath work, we actually do breath work to help them, again, release that stored energy in the body to transmute that into the world instead of keeping that locked inside, sometimes for decades.
I think there's something that you've touched on there, and I'd probably like to just round this conversation out with this thought and get your thoughts on it as we wrap up, and that is the concept of be, do, have. And you've spoken about who do I need to become so that I can do the things I need to do in order to have the things I want to have. And oftentimes, going back to what we spoke about in those seasons, in our 20s and whatnot, it's all about the have, right? It's all about the have. And when we spoke about your shift, it was about who am I becoming? What are my values? What are my beliefs? And even in this conversation now where we're talking, can I be the $10,000 a day producer? One of our clients just hit a major milestone with the practice billings for the month. And it's a big number. And but it's been about who he's become on that journey. He's become someone who's been able to train his associates to be able to onboard people, to build a great culture, all those sorts of things. So I wanted to just round out our conversation with your thoughts around becoming and the being part, because it seems to me that is really the inner game. It's who we become in the process rather than the having is the byproduct of who we become, right? So I'm just wondering if you could share your thoughts around that for a moment as we wrap up.
We live in a world that's attached by outcomes.
Yeah.
And especially, I'm in Nashville in the United States. We're kind of the leaders of a culture that is consumer. It's consumerism. It's more. It's status driven. It's power driven. And there's never enough, right?
Yep.
There's always a level of growth, always more to be sought out. And it's not just financial, it's in all realms, right? And so that creates an identity around I'm not enough if I don't achieve these outcomes or these desired results at the cost of the art of being. Simply by me showing up and breathing that I'm alive. And that is a beautiful gift. And that by me sitting, if I'm not a practicing dentist, but if I were a dentist sitting chairside with a patient, that simply my presence with that patient is shifting the atmosphere. It's shifting the nature of life for myself because I get to experience another person. And for them, they get to experience me. And together we create this moment that is the only moment in time we'll ever have together. Because the next time we see each other, we'll be different people. And so when we slow down, again, speeding up, and when I talk about speed, it's not just about going fast. It's about the art of being, the essence of who I am. How do I see myself? How do I want to experience the world? Bringing a little bit of poetry into life. And it doesn't have to literally be poetry, but how do I see the things that I'm seeing? How do I put meaning to what I'm seeing? When I listen to music, what do I feel? And can I bring, again, it goes back to those values. How can I bring more life and expression and artistry to the world through my life, through my being? We think we have to go and have some, the nice watch, right? Well, that's going to impress someone. Or if I get the Lambo, or if I get the big house, or if I go on this month-long journey through Europe and I get to post about it on social media, or if my kids get into the best university, we get to brag about our children, right? It's still just achievement based. And what is it at the end of the day? The greatest gift we can give ourselves is to love ourselves, express that into the world so that other people know that they too are loved, and just have fun doing it. Because I might have another 45 or 50 years, but I don't know. And if I don't, all that matters is what do I have in this very moment? And I struggle just as much as anyone with staying present in the moment. Because one of my one of my strength finders strengths is futuristic.
Yeah.
So I have a propensity to think into the future, to be a visionary thinker, to what's possible, what can we create? And so I have to remind myself, hey, come back to the present moment. There's some really good stuff happening right in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
Love the people in front of you. Love yourself. Treat people with loving kindness. Take a minute to, I'm in Nashville, but before we hit record, I was telling you I'm moving to Charlotte, North Carolina in a few weeks. And I found myself with friends last night, and I was looking around for a moment because I was kind of talking one-to-one with a friend, but I glanced over and there's a group of friends, there's about 8 of them, and they're playing a game. And I just stood and I kind of looked at each of their faces for a minute. And I just thought, I might never see them again in this place, in that setting in my life, because we'll all move on to different places and maybe they'll come visit, maybe they won't. And it's not often we get moments like this where you have the chance to slow down and go, I'm going to savor this. I'm going to savor this moment. And it's so easy to think, you're going to show up at your practice and you're going to work 3 days a week, 4 days a week. You're going to go through your routine. You're going to go home. Some days are really beautiful and great. Some are fun. Some are tough and challenging.
Yes.
But what if you just took a moment every now and then? It doesn't have to be all day, every day, but just go, I get to do this today.
And that's the key is I get to, I don't have to, I get to. Tyler, really thought-provoking conversation today. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. There's been goodness knows how many pearls of wisdom in there for living not just a great professional life, but just a great life. And I think that's the key is, life is there to be savoured, life is there to be enjoyed, life is there to be experienced to the full. We are all here for a short period of time in the relative, scheme of things, in the greater cosmos of the world, we're just a speck of dust, right? And so we have an opportunity to enjoy our life, to make a difference to those around us, to make a difference to ourselves. So I really want to say thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, your experiences with us, because I think those are the really important questions we've got to ask ourselves, not just how do I scale my practice or how do I, you do whatever I'm doing. So I think this is really wonderful. Thank you, mate.
I appreciate you, Jesse, and the work you bring to the world and the thought-provoking questions. And I can tell you're really listening and thinking deeply on what we were talking about. So really grateful for you.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. Well, I hope you have a great move to Charlotte. Enjoy the last weeks in Nashville. I think I mentioned to you off air, I went to Nashville a little while ago and had a wonderful time. It's a fantastic city. I've not been to Charlotte, so I hope you have a great time over there, mate. And I wish you every success in all those racing car endeavours that I know you're going to pursue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessegreen.com and download the free report.